about what trade, mercantilism, and government was in the colonies, in the British colonies. So to start us off, which costs more, a half a pound of cotton or a cotton t-shirt? On average, the farmers of the people that produce the raw material only make about 10% of the final cost of that finished good. So for example, if you have a cotton t-shirt that's $10, the cotton farmer really only got $1 of that $10 to make the cotton that was used to produce it. So if you had a choice, which one would you want your family to be selling? Would you want them to be producing the cotton t-shirt where you're going to profit $9? Or would you rather them produce the cotton that will profit you $1? It's pretty simple math there. So this is going to go into depth on what mercantilism is exactly.
Mercantilism is an economic system that was used by European countries in the 15 to 1700s. Under mercantilism, a country's wealth was determined by its accumulation of gold and silver. So just about everything the government did was to make sure it gained more gold and more silver. In order to get this gold and silver, a country needed a favorable balance of trade. This means that the country exports more than it imports. Picture the country as a business. In order for a business to succeed, it has to sell more than it buys so that it makes a profit. This is the same way countries acted as well. They would trade goods with other countries, hoping to export more than they imported. If they did, the other country would need to make up the difference in gold and silver. Colonies played a huge role in European countries increasing their wealth. A mother country would set up colonies in other parts of the world. Then, they would take the raw materials of that colony and use their industrial capabilities to turn them into manufactured goods. As these colonies became populated, they became new markets for the mother country to sell to. To put it another way, imagine a town with a grocery. Everyone in the town grows different fruits and vegetables in their gardens. So here we have Bob, and he grows apples. Meanwhile, Sandy grows tomatoes, and Norman grows broccoli. They will each supply the grocery with the food that it needs. The grocery takes the fruits and veggies, processes them, and sells them back to the people for a much higher rate. So Norman can still buy his tomato sauce and Sandy can get her broccoli cheddar soup. It's just going to be more expensive. In this example, it would make lots of sense for the people to cut out the grocery and just process the food themselves and trade with each other. However, this was not possible for European colonies for a few reasons. One, they may have lacked the ability to efficiently turn the raw materials into manufactured goods. Also, the European countries made laws to control trade and prevent colonies from trading with each other. For example, the Navigation Act said that imports and exports from British colonies had to be transported on British ships. This gave Britain a monopoly on trade and allowed British merchants to keep high prices without worrying about losing business to competition. This brings up another point about mercantilism. European countries viewed wealth as being zero-sum. In a zero-sum situation, if one side gains, the other side must lose an equal amount. They believe this because gold is a scarce resource. There's only so much of it. So, if one country gains more of the world's gold, then another country has less of it. Today, we often view trade as being positive-sum. This means that both sides can gain in trade by making the pie bigger. For example, let's think back to our farmers from before. Bob is really good at growing apples and can harvest 12 dozen apples a day. However, Bob is poor at growing tomatoes, producing only 2 dozen tomatoes a day. Sandy, meanwhile, can grow tomatoes really well, but is poor at growing apples. It makes perfect sense for the two of them to focus their efforts on what they are efficient at and to trade their surplus goods for other items that they need. By specializing in one crop and trading, they can grow the size of the pie so that both sides gain from their trade. Some other countries benefited from mercantilism and colonists were hurt by it. There was, however, one group that was hurt even.
Okay, so that summed up what mercantilism is. So now we're going to get into the triangular trade. So in this you can see that North America produced raw materials and they sent it to Great Britain. Great Britain produced finished products, which again, that's going to be more expensive, just like your t-shirt is going to be more expensive than the cotton that is used to create it. So Great Britain's going to produce those finished products and they're going to export those back to North America or to Africa. Once they're to Africa, Slaves are going to be traded for those finished products. Slaves go across the Atlantic Ocean in the Middle Passage. Many, many slaves die on this Middle Passage, and we'll talk about that later. But they get transported to North America, where they are enslaved to produce the raw materials that Great Britain needs to produce those finished products. So, to sum it up, mercantilism is an economic policy dedicated to that dictated colonies produce raw materials so the mother country can produce a finished good. And the Navigation Acts are going to help mercantilism, as it absolutely prevents North America and Africa from trading with each other. They cannot do this. And it helped Europe greatly, especially Great Britain. So here's a star question. Government of the colonies. So what leads the British colonies to forming their own self-government? Now, if I were to walk outside the classroom right now and go out to where you could see me from outside, and I have one kid in class that I'm texting to give them directions, how well is that going to work? Because that's exactly what the British colonies were doing. Great Britain was sending mail to the colonies to try to tell them what to do, when that would take months and months and months. So their distance from Great Britain is going to help the colonies form self-government because they need to. It creates a need. Then they also need a basic law and order, which is how they created the lawmaking system, or why they created the lawmaking system. And then finally, natural human rights. The ideas from at the time when the Enlightenment thinkers are starting to think about how people should influence their government, all lead to representative government in the United States, or in the colonies at the time. So influences of colonial government. We have the Magna Carta, which was written in 1215. It limited the power of the king. This is the first limit. It created a due process, fair trial, and punishments for people in Great Britain, and it also included property rights. So the people who are going to get the most out of this are going to be the rich, wealthy people in Great Britain who owned property. The English Bill of Rights is really when individual rights start playing an impact into law. This is where they started a legislative branch, a parliament. This parliament had elected officials that voted on laws for the people. And they also included the right to bear arms, the right to protest their government, and no cruel and unusual punishments, which is a lot of what our Bill of Rights are today. So the Enlightenment thinkers that are important, the main thing that you need to know about Enlightenment thinkers is that they believed that people enter into a contract with their government. Government works for the people to protect them and their rights. So John Locke's going to be a big one. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and property, and the job is to protect those things. And then Charles de Montesquieu, he believed in separation of powers and the three branches of government. That comes into a big play later when we talk about the Constitution. So some different forms of colonial government. You had town hall meetings, also known as general assemblies. These are going to be the first forms of real government because they're very, very simple to form. Basically, men that lived in a town or an area that owned property would all get together in a church or in a building, and they would decide on laws. So the House of Burgesses is going to be the first official legislative branch. It was created by the Virginia Trading Company as a way for people to govern themselves. It is the first legislative body, like full-on body in the Americas. Men voted for representatives that created the laws. So I would vote on somebody to represent what I want to be said in government instead of me being there myself. That's what representative government is. The Mayflower Compact was written in 1620 by Puritans settling Plymouth Rock. It was the first attempt at self-government in the Americas. It didn't really work out the way they thought, but it was the first attempt. They did agree on three things. We need to create our own government, everyone needs to agree to follow these laws, and government must serve the common good. So here's a star question. Here's another star. The Fundamental Orders of Connecticut is going to be written by Thomas Hooker in Connecticut. It's the first written constitution of the Americas, and it expanded representative government. All free men were able to vote, not just the ones in churches. So it did separate the church from the state, also known as separating religion from government. Here's a star question. And that's all, folks.